I was collecting all the books that I need for a podcast with you.
There's a few. I was looking through my list yesterday of what I've all read in the last year or so, and it's pretty impressive. I like going back and looking at my list of, I think there were 33 books that I've read since we started this podcast.
Oh, wow. Wow. I've got so every book we've read, I've got it on one shelf, and they're in order from the way we've recorded them. And that's purely because I'm a creature of habit, and every time I get done with it, it goes on that shelf. I'm not going to rearrange it, so it just ends up being in the exact order that we've read them. So it's kind of a fun way to look at it and say, oh, there's Bookworm. Like, that is every book of Bookworm right there. It's kind of cool.
That sounds like
take a picture of that.
A Joe thing to do.
It's very Joe, yes. So, but every time we record a podcast here, I have to go, of course, get the book that we're going to talk about. And then now I have to grab the book for my Gap book. And then I need to grab the one that we're going to pitch for the next round. So I always have at least these 3 books, but then I usually have like 4 or 5 sitting on my desk at the same time.
Nice.
Let's just say I'm obsessed, maybe slightly. That's okay. We have a podcast called Bookworm. It's okay to be obsessed with books, right?
That's right. Although we missed National Book Day, I believe. I think it was Saturday or Sunday as we record this.
Because we're complete failures with social media, apparently.
I think that's okay, though.
At least I am. I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, I am not so great at Twitter lately. I used to be really good at Twitter. I'm not sure what happened, Mike. I used to be good at posting things and posting my articles, and that's about, like, I post my articles and stuff, if I would write one, when they happen, but past that, I really don't promote on social media at all. It's probably terrible.
That's okay, because you know what you are good at posting? New podcasts.
I am good at posting new podcasts. That's fun. So what Josh, wow. Rough morning, apparently. So what Mike is alluding to for the listeners is that I have recently released a new podcast with another friend of mine, Josh Wrench, called Theoretical Accountability.
Oh, I thought it was Make Fun of Mike.
Well, the first one kind of turned into that. I told Josh, I was like, I feel like we just threw Mike under the bus and he's not here to defend himself. This is not cool. So, yes, you can ream us for that one. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I was confused. I get it now, but I've listened to all 3 episodes. So by episode 3, it's transformed from the Pick on Mike podcast to the now we're actually going to hold people accountable to our goals podcast. Got it.
Yep. And it doesn't help that I've now got people sending me emails getting onto me for not seeing Star Wars. Okay. Like that. Yeah, it's an absurd number of people.
I tweeted something about that. I don't want to pick on you too bad, but you definitely need to do that. I like Josh's idea of making that one of your 12-week year goals.
Right. Yeah, it's okay. You can pick on me since we've picked on you. You
don't start at the beginning. Skip the first 3 episodes and do them in chronological order. Do episode 4, 5, and 6 first.
Okay. Why is that? Is that just because that's the way everyone else is?
Those are the originals, and they're way better than the prequels or whatever you want to call episode 1, 2, and 3. Those are the ones that Lucas redid when he had a whole bunch of money. And he basically could do anything that he wanted, and there's a lot of just dumb, cheesy stuff in there. The originals were the amazing technical achievements of their day, and they're still pretty cool. Even my kids like the 4, 5, and 6 better.
Nice. Well, I will keep that in mind. It sounds like I'm not going to live very long if I don't watch these soon. So, yes, for the listeners, that has all come out in this other podcast, Theoretical Accountability. I'll drop a link to that in the show notes, but I'm not going to belabor that one a whole lot here. Essentially what it is Josh and I started holding each other accountable, in theory, on our 12-week year goals. And after about 3 months, I realized we were spending more time having fun rants than we were actually keeping each other accountable to our goals. And it's a fun conversation to have, thus theoretical accountability.
Nice.
So there's the plug. I'm done. I'll leave it alone now.
All right. So next one on the list here is mine, I think. To-do versus OmniFocus. I assume you're talking about my original statement about maybe I'll get into To-do. Well, Matt Ryan basically talked me out of it. I've been watching
to talk you into it.
He is, but also in that podcast, he's like, well, I know that Ken Case from OmniFocus or the Omni Group is mentioned that they're going to implement some of the features that I liked about To-do that are currently missing, like multiple contexts, for example. And I know that he tweeted a while back, hey, anybody interested in a team-based version of OmniFocus? And of course, the internet went nuts.
Who would say no?
Yeah. So I kind of feel like if I were to switch everything over to do now, it's only a matter of time before OmniFocus comes out. And it's probably sooner rather than later with everything that I'm looking for. That tends to happen to me a lot. I sit on the fence for a long time, and then by the time I do something, it's the time has passed. Like, for example, we've had Time Warner Cable here in Wisconsin for a long time. I read the Wirecutter article about how you can save $10 a month if you get your own router. So I went and I bought my own router, got it set up. I'm like, hey, that wasn't so bad. I should have done it a long time ago. About 2 weeks after I did that, they changed to Spectrum and they got rid of the monthly modem fee. So cool. Thanks, guys.
Nice. So then you lost money on it instead of making money on it.
Yeah. I mean, I do own my own modem at the moment, and I don't have any of the connectivity issues that I was having with the older modem that I was using, but I'm sure I could have just got a new one. Right. Anyways, tangent we don't need to go down. But all that to say, the way my brain works, I am now watching intently what is happening with To-do and OmniFocus, but I don't feel like I'm in a place where I feel comfortable switching yet.
I've seen a lot of these things come up. Like To-do has come up. What was the other one for a while? Todoist was very big. I guess it still is.
I would switch to Todoist in a second if they would implement start dates or defer dates. Come on, Todoist. Seriously. Like, this is basic task management stuff. You don't want everything due, because you're going to go into your task manager, you're going to see all this stuff that's overdue, and you're not even going to know what's really due because you only have one option in Todoist, and that is to put a due date on it. You can't say, I want to start thinking about this at a particular date. This seems so simple. But if Todoist would do this, I would switch in a second, because you can add tasks via the Amazon Echo. You can integrate with a whole bunch of email applications. Todoist has a great API, and so there's a lot of email apps out there that integrate directly with Todoist. Which OmniFocus does too, but only if you're on the Mac and only if you use certain clients. I am looking for another iOS client that will go directly from the email client to OmniFocus. There's two. There's Dispatch and there's Airmail. And I don't personally do a whole lot of email on my mobile device, and I periodically will delete the app for periods of time. Yeah, I did. I recently put it back on for a season, but I'm going to delete it again. It's just my cycle, I guess. But people ask me all the time at Agent Efficiency, like, well, what email apps do you recommend for iOS? So I'm constantly going in there and seeing what's available.
Right.
And Dispatch is the only one that has the direct link to the original message in the message URL format. Airmail creates the link as well, but it's an Airmail format, which means that if you try to use that link on your Mac, for example, and you don't have Airmail installed, that link is useless. And I don't know why Dispatch is the only company that uses that message URL, or it gives you the option to use it. But their Dispatch is kind of, it was a great app, and it seems like it's kind of in maintenance mode now, and there's not much new stuff being added to it. It's a little clunky, a little bit slow. Like, sometimes I'll find that if I were to archive a message in Dispatch, then move on to the next message, and then like archive or delete that one. Sometimes it takes a little while for it to register, and so like I'll delete a message and then it'll come back, and then I'm like, wait, what just happened here? And it's just, I'm sure, just pinging the server, and it's taking a little while. But little things like that just don't make it a real pleasant experience. But I feel completely stuck because it is the only application that provides that message URL format. So very, very technical, geeky rant there, I guess, but. Yeah. That's why I'm still not
I was not expecting to strike a chord when I said Todoist, but there you go. I've got an email app I'm playing with. What's it called? Notion. Have you seen this one?
Mm-mm.
So it does the whole open with to where you can use the share sheet. and you can send an email to OmniFocus with that. I just tried it on my phone. So you can do that, but it doesn't look like it sends the link. It sends the whole content of the email.
Exactly.
Itself.
Which is not what I want. And that doesn't make a whole lot of sense from a task management nerd perspective anyways.
Yeah. Anyway, I threw To Do versus OmniFocus on the list just because I knew you had mentioned it, but I've been seeing, like, To Do has been making the rounds of pulling people from OmniFocus. So has Todoist for a little while, but I always have to ask these questions of why and what's it get me, and I rarely find features in those apps that are compelling enough to get me off of OmniFocus. But some of the rationale that people go through whenever they do that is the devices that they have to use. So if I work in a PC only world, OmniFocus gets really hard to use if you can use it at all. But I don't work in that world. And whenever I'm using my phone, like, people want a lot of features on your phone to do things. I get that, but I just don't use it that way. Like, my phone is the list that I'll work off of versus my Mac. So, like, I'll pull up my list on my phone, and that's what I work off of. I'm not really doing any heavy lifting with my phone. I do all the heavy stuff on my Mac. Maybe that's why I'm so big into Apple scripts. Who knows? But that's where I land on it. I don't get too picky with it, but I knew that you were exploring it, but I was curious where you were headed with it.
I love To Do at the moment. What makes me nervous is it's a newer app, and it's published by one guy, and I love indie developers, but I am not willing to trust my entire productive life, like how I get things done, to one developer who may just decide, based on an Apple change in the new iOS operating system, and he doesn't have a team behind him to implement a new framework, be like, forget this. So I'm kind of just waiting and seeing with that.
Yeah. I think To Do has some cool stuff on iOS, but I feel like OmniFocus is pulling in a lot of those features, and they're pulling some stuff from some other apps that are very beneficial, like the Do has the repeating reminders. Like, that's awesome. I use that regularly. Whenever OmniFocus gets that, I will probably delete Do from my phone. Like, there's just no point in it at that point.
And Matt Ryan said in that episode that's one of the things that is coming. And in fact, why don't we put a link to that episode in the show notes if people are still listening to this episode because they are interested in this sort of thing. Matt did a great job of explaining To Do, explaining To Do in that episode. So
this was on Agent Efficiency?
Yep. Okay. I can get you the link, but he did an awesome job. I had to talk him into it. He was nervous about coming on the podcast, but I thought he did a great job. He explained it very thoroughly, but also it's very approachable. Like, you don't have to be an expert in task management to understand what Matt likes about To Do and how he's using it and stuff like that. So
I always think things like that are helpful. Like, somebody just show me your mental rationale on how you got to something. And I may not agree with you, but it's at least interesting, I think.
Yeah, he even spun one of the things that I didn't like about To Do, which is To Do has this built-in view where they have like these 3 bars, which indicates essentially the priority level. And I'm like, that's not right. There's only one priority level. It's either priority or it's not. He's like, yeah, that's true. But the thing about To Do is that you can use it however you want. They say that in the tagline, GTD to XYZ and everything in between. So they give you the framework. Essentially, they're basically like, use this however it makes sense. So what he did is he took those priority levels and he made those energy levels. And I was like, that makes so much sense, because I've tried to implement energy level based context before, and they just never stick, because it's like, it runs into that problem again where you've only got one context per task. Like, does this really belong in low energy, or does this belong in studio, for example? And maybe it's something I need to do in my studio while I have low energy. Or he gave the example in the podcast, it's something that you want to do when you're in New York with your brother. Like, what do you do with those use cases? And one of the ways he got around that was implementing the priority levels as energy levels, which I thought was a brilliant hack, if you will, of To Do.
Yeah. We tend to hack these apps. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
How could I use this feature to do what I want in a way that they didn't want me to use it? Yeah, do that a lot. Let's
probably
shift
enough
off of
about task management.
Yeah, I would say we could spend a long time on that. I want to revisit Grit from last time, because you and I were both thinking through ways to help our kids when things get hard and helping them develop more grit. How's that going on your end?
Well, this is one of the things that is kind of hard to measure. I can tell you that one of my specific action items was implementing that hard things rule.
Yeah.
And we have that actually on our agenda for the next family meeting. I've talked to my wife a little bit about this, outlined the different steps essentially, and she's in agreement with the principle of it. And now we just need to figure out what is everybody's hard thing. Now, that being said, we are doing this already. I just want to get it in writing. So like we've got our daily habits, our daily rituals. I, for example, play guitar on the worship team of my church. I practice that. I practice other things that I do consistently. And my kids, they're playing piano, so they're practicing every single day. And so I just want to get it formalized essentially, and then just make sure that we're recognizing that, yes, we are consistently doing these hard things, and then kind of having a formalized record of that.
Nice. I've been trying to notice when, especially our oldest is working on something and then she just wants to give up and go do something else. I've been trying to catch those moments and try to encourage her to keep going. Like, okay, you did this. Let's add one more level to it and see if you can get that done. Well, I want to go do this other thing. Well, no, let's stick with it just 1 minute longer, and just trying to slowly build that into her, because she's like me. She likes to bounce from thing to thing. I think she's got a tendency towards the ADHD thing from an attention standpoint, not necessarily hyperactive, but trying to help her with that. She doesn't like it at all. So that'll be a process to continually help her with that.
You know, on this topic, this is an interesting observation that I've noticed, and I'm not saying that there is 100% like value in this, but just one of the ways that I've seen this play out, really just brought to my attention after reading that book, is I mentioned in the last episode that we got a Nintendo Switch, and the only game that we have for it at the moment is the Zelda game.
Oh, right.
My 9-year-old loves Zelda, but he's really bad at it. And so I noticed like at the beginning, he would prefer to watch me play it because I've played those types of games for a while. And, some of like the racing games and things like that, he can do circles around me. But that type of game, that's not something that he has typically played in the past. And so he would like to see me beat the monsters and be more successful, because it is a very difficult game. I mean, even for me, who's grown up playing those types of games, it's very, very, very difficult to get used to. You do die a lot in that game. So there's a lot of failure built in to the game. And I've noticed a shift in him though, where like he's gone from preferring to watch me play it to him actually playing it, even though like he's way, way behind me in terms of where he is in the game. I'll come home because we limit the time that our kids spend playing video games every day. And he'll like, first thing he says when he get in the door, he's like, I made it to Kakariko Village, or I beat that rock monster. And I'm like, yeah, way to go, guy. Yeah. Because it's interesting how like even something like video games can build confidence, and I would say grit. Now, obviously, I'm not going to say, oh, this is their hard thing. That doesn't count. But it is interesting to recognize the different arenas that this plays out in. Nice.
I think working with kids on this stuff is not simple. And if you've got something like that, that's awesome. I'm trying to find something like that for my oldest, but I haven't nailed it down yet because she's not old enough to be able to determine that on her own. So she's going to need some help with it. But it's the way it goes. I want to talk about before we get to this Apple script, Angela Duckworth's TED Talk. You said you were going to watch it. Did you?
I did. I watched it. It was really good. She's a lot younger than I thought she was.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
She looks like she's maybe 30, 35 in that video.
Right.
And she's talking about, obviously, it's while she was doing her research. So when you read Grit, she's got a whole bunch of research projects that she's done, and she's explaining what she found during the research. And some of those things you can tell that she is completed, and some of those that she's in the middle of when she gave the talk. And I think the talk was from like 2013, 2014, if I remember right.
Yeah, somewhere in there, yeah.
A lot of the key concepts from the book surface in, I think it's 6.5 minutes or something like that. But she did a great job, I thought. And really, like, if you were going to look for a 6.5 minute synopsis of the book, definitely check out that TED Talk. She talks about the West Point thing. She talks about how she doesn't necessarily know how you develop grit, which she kind of talks about in the book too. She can say, like, these things are linked and successful people have this grit, but there is no formula for teaching this stuff. She talks about the growth mindset, which I think is a really important key. She doesn't say, like, this is the way to do it, but she basically alludes to, while there isn't a formula for this thing, people who have the growth mindset seem to be able to develop this stuff, do better. And so I really liked that part of it. But I thought she did a great job on the talk. It's very, very entertaining. It got me wanting to watch more TED Talks.
Welcome to my world. I love TED Talks. I'm always watching them. It seems like there's enough of them out there that you can fill in time with them all, like in regular scenarios. Instead of watching YouTube, I find myself on TED.com.
Yeah, so one of my goals as of maybe a month ago is to actually give a TED Talk. I was at a Toastmasters competition. I think I maybe mentioned this last time, where I made it past the first round, I made it past the club speak off, whatever, because you have to choose one person to represent your club. Next round is like I don't know all the different terms, but there's like multiple clubs that are there in your region or section. I don't know. Josh would know because he's like the regional director. So basically I got past that first regional round and made it to the second regional round where I took third. And so at that point, if you take first, you go to the bigger region. And then from there, I think it's international. Wow. If you do well there. So I took third, which was pretty good. I blanked in the middle of my speech, which was just completely nerves because I've given that speech a bunch of times and I had it down. There were a couple guys that were there that were very animated. The guy who won was an ex-Marine and kind of told his personal story during his talk and just played up the fact that, like, he's not your stereotypical Toastmasters speaker and everybody's telling him, you can't do this, you can't do that. And he's like, well, I have to do that because that's who I am.
Yeah.
So flaws and all, here I am. So it was cool to meet him. He had a very inspirational story. I'm glad that he won. But everybody, him and then the guy who took second, they both came from a different club and they're like, man, your speech was so good. They're like, the guy who won, he's like, I may have won, but your speech, like, you're going to give a TED Talk someday. He's like, that was so good. And I'm like, oh, cool. I never even really thought about that, but I dug into it a little bit and I think that would be awesome and kind of right up my alley.
Yeah. Are you going to shoot for a TEDx or the legit TED?
Well, I think TEDx is the place to start. Looking at the process, it looks like that one is quite a bit easier to get into. I don't really have public speaking credentials, so to speak. Yeah. So that's probably the place to start.
Nice. That would be really cool. I would do what I could to be there if you do that, Michael.
But Toastmasters is great. Like, I never even considered myself a public speaker. I've been involved with Toastmasters now about 1.5 years, and like just seeing crazy growth in that area where now it's something that I really enjoy doing. I still get nervous every single time.
Good.
But I guess as long as it doesn't make me forget what I'm speaking. Well, that was the hard part is like, for the speech competition, you don't get a podium. You don't get any notes. Like, you're up on this stage and you're giving your 5 to 7 minute talk and you're just giving it. Like, it's different than even at the club level. Like, I don't usually use notes, but I have them up on the podium with me just in case.
Right.
So just not having my notes there was enough to freak me out to the point where I just completely forgot where I was at one point.
Yeah. Josh is talking about, he's doing this Minneapolis Ignite. He's got a talk on bacon that he's doing. And he mentioned that his slides auto advance. They're all timed and they just move on. No one's hitting the button. No, he can't trigger it. It's just, he has to go.
That would freak me out.
That's exactly what I thought. It's like, I don't think I could do this. No.
No, not at all. And, it sounds like Josh is a lot further in Toastmasters than I am. So I can't say that, like, this is not the spirit of Toastmasters. But my understanding, the way our club runs, like, you've got a word of the day that they give you, and then you're supposed to try to incorporate that into your speech. Kind of gets you to think on the fly. And if you say the word of the day, then everybody raps on the table.
Nice.
Just as like recognition that, hey, you did this. And so one of the things that I've tried to incorporate in Toastmasters, because I tend to be very rigid and I write everything out and I've got everything planned and then I just try to stick to the plan.
Which is why I try to make our talking points fluid for you.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is good for me. This is good practice. Like I think that for a lot of speeches, and maybe the one at the Ignite conference is a little bit different. So again, not trying to say, Josh, that you're doing it wrong or anything, but one of the big benefits of Toastmasters that I get is that you kind of think on your feet. And even if you've got your outline, even if you've got your speech down, like the ability to adapt that as you go based on what the audience is doing even. You know, if you say something and you're like, oh, wow, that they really responded to that, like hammer that home more, really spend a little bit more time on that point, whatever. Again, it's going to be different depending on the format of the talk that you're giving. But that's one of the things that I like about Toastmasters is that it doesn't have to be so like word for word memorization. And I'm trying to get away from that, I guess, is the short version of that big spiel.
How would that play into doing a TED Talk? Because those are word for word scripted, right?
Usually. I mean, most of the people that you see give TED Talks, it seems like they've got it scripted. But even in like the Angela Duckworth one, you can tell like she's got a joke in there and at some point, like she delivers the line and then everybody laughs. Okay, so what do you do when everybody laughs? Mm-hmm. If you are so focused on, I've got to get done by a certain time, that's going to throw you off. But that's not a bad thing necessarily, unless you make it because you've got everything timed out perfectly, you know?
Yeah.
Which, again, like that's just weird to me that for whatever reason, they wouldn't give him like a clicker so you can at least control it. Don McAllister did that, by the way, at the last Max Stock. He had the video from one of his Screencast Online things, and then he narrated it live. And he did a great job with it, but when he started, I was like, this is not going to end well.
Yeah. He even acknowledged that one. This might not turn out well, but I'm going to narrate a video.
Yeah. So, well, good luck, Josh.
Yeah, I've got tickets to that. I want to see how he does. But I guess every single one of those talks is going to be that way. So, I don't know. We'll see. I will let you know how it goes. That comes up here in a couple weeks, so it'll be good. Let's talk about your Apple script, or rather, that it probably won't happen. You're still the only one that donated to it, Mike.
Dang it. Well,
sorry.
We tried. I tried more accurately.
So I'm going to kill it. I'll send you your donation back.
Okay.
There you go.
Thanks.
What are you going to do do you need a nagging thing? Like, I don't know what else to help you with on that.
No, probably not. It would be nice, but that's okay. We'll figure this out.
So could you use Do on your, I suppose whenever OmniFocus gets their thing out, you could set up something potentially on the Mac that does it through OmniFocus. If they've got the recurring alerts, that might work.
Potentially. This may be the thing that gets me to finally figure out AppleScript. Like I know enough about AppleScript to piece it together based off of examples and modify some stuff to make it do what I want. But like just sitting down with a blank slate and writing it, that's above my head at the moment.
Well, but, I don't recommend people do that ever. Like whenever you're starting out coding, I rarely recommend. Actually, I don't think I've ever recommended that you start out with a blank slate because you don't know. Creating the framework is not going to be simple for you. And if you find something that already exists, you'll be better off. Like if you found something that interacted and put things into day one, you could start with that. And then go find something else that has like a recurring alert on it and try to combine the two.
Yeah. I do know, by the way, I wrote a workflow post for the Suite Setup on piping things into day one using IFTTT. So I know that you can automatically get things into day one that way.
Right.
Maybe the thing to do here is not the prompt, but just more documentation of what I'm doing through the day, storing that in day one automatically, and then periodically, weekly, monthly, whatever, going through and looking at those posts.
Nightly?
Nightly might seem, that seems like a lot, but perhaps.
I don't know. That's kind of what I do whenever I do my journaling at night. I try to reflect on what I did that day, and then that helps me set up tomorrow. That way I'm not continuing down a road on some things.
This reminds me that the sweet setup thing that I need to defend myself for this back burner context. This is another thing that you guys roasted me on.
Well, I should say Josh kind of got you on that one.
Yeah. So let me give you an example of how I use this. Okay. So I have a lot of content that I create.
And sorry about this.
And I sat down and thought about it this week. I'm like, what do I all create content for? Like my regular content creation schedule. What does that look like? So I do the weekly productivity show. I do the bi-weekly bookworm with you. Mm-hmm. I do a bi-weekly workflow post for the Sweet Setup. I occasionally write articles for the Sweet Setup. I'm working on one on Pomodoro apps. I do a monthly article for Screencasts Online in the magazine. And about monthly, I do a 45-minute video screencast for Screencasts Online. Then there's the faith-based productivity stuff that I've been building up in the background, which I guess, I kind of announced that now. So I guess I have to get some posts up before we publish this one.
Like, okay, here you go. Accountability, done.
Yeah. So like there's a lot of content there, but none of this stuff I can wait until the last minute and then just crank it out. So these are all the types of things that I would put on the back burner context. I know the next 4 workflow posts that I have to write for the Sweet Setup. And they don't take me super long to do. They take a couple of hours. I got to create some screenshots, stuff like that. But those are the things where I don't want to go back into my review weekly. If I get to Wednesday and I've got an extra 2 hours and I'm feeling energized and I can do some deep work, I can get some writing done, I'm going to go to that back burner context and look at the, whatever writing content creation piece I want to focus on and start working on that. And having that stuff instantly accessible without having to do a full review is invaluable to me.
So is this back burner context, so I assume this is a technical thing in OmniFocus, since you're still on OmniFocus, is this a context that's on hold? Or are you flagging the projects as on hold, inactive? I forget what the actual term is there.
Well, most of these, I don't follow the task management philosophy to the T, which is break it down into the smallest step possible. Because like a workflow post, for example, I will sit down on those. I will usually finish those in one sitting. Okay. So I'm not going to create separate tasks for outline the article and then download the app and, create the screenshots and send the finished version to Stephen Hackett is the guy that I report to essentially I create the content, send it to him, and then he takes it from there. So I'll just have a task for creating this workflow post and it'll be sitting in my back burner context because I basically want it to be ready at any given moment. This is my sixth man off the bench talking NBA playoffs. Like, you got to be ready. Manu Ginobili, hot off the bench. So I don't want to have to go into my whole review and search through all my contexts and all my projects and things like that to get this stuff. But at the beginning of the day, I might not know that this is something that I want to work on either. It kind of depends on how my day goes. Sometimes, because I'm creating content majority of the time, I will just feel brain dead and it'll take me a really long time to write whatever article I'm supposed to be writing, create obviously a lot of content and videos and things like that, which wasn't even on that list for Asian efficiency. And so like that'll be the stuff that I make sure it gets done first. And then at the end of the day, if I've got anything left in the tank, essentially, that's where the back burner context comes in.
Okay. I was getting ready to ask, like, what are the scenarios or the tools, locations and stuff where this back burner context gets pulled out that you start working on it?
Yeah. So essentially, like when I do my weekly review, I'll identify that the next workflow post, which is due in 2 weeks, that's a prime candidate for something to be worked on whenever I've got a little bit of time and a lot of energy. So I'll throw that in the back burner context. And then during the next week, if that opportunity arises, I will pull that out and work on it. Otherwise, it does have a due date by a certain date. So if it doesn't get done at that point, then eventually it does become something that would fall into the normal workflow.
What is the Asian efficiency push as a context in, I don't know what product it is. It's something to do with OmniFocus. There's a context that they tend to talk about called, what is it, Do? D-O?
Yep.
Is that right?
I use that one all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. And essentially that's the one that it doesn't fall into a specific context, specific place, but it's something that you've just got to do. So in the past, for example, you might have had separate contexts for Mac, iPad, whatever. And that would have made sense because the iPad would be more limited and there were some things that you could only do on your Mac. And there are some things that I have a Mac context still because I prefer to do them on my Mac. But a lot of the things can be done on a myriad of devices, a myriad of different places. So if you're thinking about context in the GTD sense, the person, place, or thing that you need to get the job done, well, the person is me. The place or the thing is really anywhere because I've got this stuff with me. So I'm just going to put this as something that I've got to do. It's the catch-all context where this is basically always available.
Yeah. I stopped thinking about my context as the things that are required to do the task because that's where you start wanting multiple contexts for a given task. But if you shift it over to start thinking about which tool is best suited for that task, like I can make phone calls technically from my computer or my phone.
Yep.
So the question there is, well, which one is better suited for that? If I can only pick one, which one is it? Well, my phone, duh. In that case, that's pretty simple. But if it's something like Google, what's one I'm trying to do? Learn how to create better gluten strands in whole wheat sourdough. Here you go. So we make homemade sourdough. There you go. With that, I could do that research on my phone, but it's better suited for my Mac. Now, that one's a bit odd because I have a context called Learn because I know that one, it's a little better on the Mac, but it's pretty easy to do at the same level from my phone. But you get the idea. I mean, I'm trying to select the context that's best suited for a task as opposed to the ones that are possible. Because so many times I've got some that are possible to do from any and all devices or in any place, but it's better and more effective if I do it at home with my laptop set up in my docking station on my desk. Like that's best case scenario for like any development projects. Those are going to be better suited if I'm at home in that world. Does that make sense? Because it's just so much better to do a task that way.
Completely agree. But what happens when you need to do that task and you don't have your preferred tool available? Chances are that nowadays you can still get that task done using a mobile application, for example, even on your phone. So that's where the do context comes in, is if you can set up all your contexts so that everything is compartmentalized and you never have fires that you have to deal with, great, do that. But in the case that there is, and you need to be able to see, these are the things that I can do right now. Like I am on my phone, I'm looking at my phone, and that task, get back to the client X, because it's set up in the Mac context, because that's where I prefer to do it, that doesn't show up. Like, depending how your workday and your workflow plays out, that could be a bad thing.
Yes, but I don't ever deal with that and I have a lot of clients and I deal with fires all the time. That's a lot of what I do. But so every night, we'll move on to our book and this will make a lot more sense here soon. But every night I go through all of the available tasks that I have. So in OmniFocus, I'm cycling through that context perspective that's built in. And I've pruned and worked on the projects and such that are actually available so that those lists are showing me the active project tasks only. And if I'm going through that every night, I know what needs done tomorrow in order to keep up. And the only fires that would come up that need taken care of that aren't already on my radar would be through email. And if those come in and there's a massive fire in email, I'll take care of it right away or prioritize it depending on how everything else I have going on fits in. But I don't really deal with that scenario, I guess. Maybe it's just because I'm doing that review each night. I don't know. It's just not something I deal with. And I feel like I deal with a lot of fires, Mike.
You probably do. I would say that the less maintenance you do with your system. So if you don't check your system every single night, and ideally I would agree that you should, but if you don't go through things every night, then that's where the value of a general catch-all context can really benefit you, because you need to be able to see the things that you can do at any given time, filterable by context. And so if you haven't gotten to the point where you've divided up your day to the point where you know that I'm going to be able to do this thing in this particular place, then then you run into the scenario that I described earlier where it's like you need to be able to see what you have to do, even if you're not at your preferred tool in order to get it done.
Yep. I need to throw chapter markers on this episode.
Not a bad idea. Yeah. But the whole topic of task management, I think, does play into the book that we read for today, which is The Sleep Revolution by Arianna. I don't know. Arianna Huffington. And there's a lot of stuff in here. I put even a note here for page 167 about emergency scan modality, which we'll get to in a little bit. But this book was really interesting because she talks in the first section about the problems that we have to deal with, which lead to us not getting enough sleep. And then the second part of the book, she talks about some of the tactics and techniques, things like that you can use to get better sleep. But this was my choice, and I picked this book essentially because I heard about it in the Asian Efficiency Dojo a while back, and then, like I mentioned in the last episode, I actually bought this while I was in Woodstock, Illinois for MacStock, and you were with me when I bought it.
Yep.
So every time we did Bookworm, I'm like, oh yeah, I bought that book with Joe. We should really cover that one. And so now we covered it.
There you go. I really liked this book, Mike. I think that's probably because I struggle to get enough sleep.
Nice. Yeah, sleep is a topic that is very important to me personally, because when I was 18 years old, summer before my freshman year of college, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. And epilepsy is a genetic disease, disorder, whatever. So my grandma had it, and it typically skips a generation. And so they told me basically that I had it, and I have had 2 seizures in my life. I haven't had one in now, almost 15 years. So it's completely under control. But one of the things that I've had to keep tabs of ever since I had my first seizure was one of the things that told me that can trigger a seizure is not getting enough sleep. And actually on page 19 in this book, she says that we all have a seizure threshold, where if we don't get enough sleep, at some point your body is just going to completely shut down. You're going to have a seizure. And in her case, she hit her head on the desk and she woke up in a pool of blood, as she said. Like, sounds pretty graphic, pretty major, but when you think about it, there's a lot of bad stuff that can happen from not getting enough sleep. She talks about the concept of microsleep, and nodding off when you're driving could be fatal not only for you but for a lot of other people.
Right.
And so we kind of think that we've got this superhero syndrome going on, where I can survive on 5 hours of sleep a night or whatever. And no, you can't, unless you're in the 1% of the population that's a short sleeper. Everybody thinks that they are in that 1%. That's the thing. You're probably not. You're most likely not. I'll go as far as to say you're definitely not. You need to recognize that your body functions only the way that it's supposed to, only when you have enough fuel, only when you have enough sleep, and your brain is able to recover and restore the stuff that gets used up throughout your day. And most people just don't give it the time to recover.
I will say that at the beginning of this book, she did a very good job of explaining, I guess, the dangers of not getting enough sleep or sleep deprivation. And I dealt with a lot of people. Well, I shouldn't say dealt. I deal with a lot of people who fall into that category for sure. After doing the sleep questionnaire at the end, Mike, I realized I'm not really in that category despite me wanting more sleep. But I deal with a lot of people who are zombies, and you can get them to say yes to just about anything, it seems like, if you lead them the right way, which you have to be a little careful with. Because I feel like I have to take responsibility for some folks because they're not in their right mind to be making decisions. And at what point do I take responsibility for them because they're not doing their part? I hate that. But I feel like I have to do it. Before we go too far down this, I want to talk about our sleep habits pre-book. Because I have a feeling that they changed. At least what we want to do changes. Am I wrong in that? Because I definitely wanted to change some things.
Well,
did you want to change things?
Sleep is something that has been pretty important to me for a while. I've for a long time focused on not only getting enough sleep, but also getting enough good sleep, quality sleep. So I've understood the different stages of sleep, the effect of blue light, stuff like that, which we'll get into in this episode. So I've known, I guess, for a while what I've wanted my evening routine to be, and I have intermittently stuck with that. But what this book did is it reignited the desire to really cement that in stone, to really understand to really implement on a daily basis and basically not compromise even one time, because that one time becomes another time, and then pretty soon, instead of going to bed at 10 o'clock, you're going to bed at 11:30, not just the one time, but every single night. And that's where you get this cumulative effect with this lack of sleep. So my sleep habits on paper haven't really changed a whole lot, but we'll see, I guess, whether this really sticks. Essentially, what I try to do is not use my phone after 8 p.m. I've been bad at this, especially recently. Part of the problem is that Tan and I play Carcassonne on iOS all the time, and he's always making moves late at night, and I get the notifications.
Is he in a different time zone than you?
No, he just is a late gamer, I guess.
I got it.
But I try to not use my phone or my computer after 8 o'clock, and then after the kids go to bed, because 8 o'clock is their bedtime, usually try to read and not stare at a screen. Again, not been great at this. My wife and I have gotten into Mystery Science Theater 3000 is on Netflix now, so we've been going back and watching those at night after the kids go to bed. Probably not great for the quality of sleep that we get. And I've also tried to make sure that I go to bed at 10, but like I said, I've seen that creep where I've been going to bed essentially consistently at 11, and I usually get up about 6:30, so still getting 7.5 hours of sleep essentially, but
right.
If you go to bed earlier, you get better sleep, so I definitely want to shift it that way.
Are you a napper at all?
I'm not. I have a hard time falling asleep, and so whenever I've got like a half an hour, 45 minutes, I'm like, oh, I'll take a nap. Then it doesn't usually work for me.
Okay.
The exception, though, would be last Friday when about 1 p.m. I just felt completely thrashed and completely useless. Mm-hmm. So I just stopped what I was doing, went home and took a nap, and I fell asleep instantly. I knew that last week was a busy week for me, and so by the end of the week, I had nothing left in the tank. So it was a good thing that I did that.
Nice.
But generally, I do not nap.
I'm not much of a napper either, but I go to bed I start going to bed at about 9. It's about 9:30, 9:45 before I'm asleep. Actually getting in bed. Well, time I get in bed, I read for a little bit. Well, let me back up. So at about 8:30, I will start getting breakfast ready for tomorrow and getting my clothes out for tomorrow and making sure the house is tidied up and doors are locked, windows are shut, blah, blah, blah. So I do all that stuff ahead of time. That way the house is ready to go for tomorrow. And then whenever I go upstairs, get myself ready for bed, crawl into bed, I'll read a little bit of fiction at night. So I've lately been reading The Hobbit, Mike, which is fun. I haven't really been a fiction reader for a long time. Really ever.
Yeah, me either.
Don't judge me.
No, I cannot actually read fiction. I don't know why. I just have a really tough time doing that.
Does it put you to sleep?
No, it's just, I guess there's so many nonfiction books that I know I want to read that it feels somewhat indulgent, or I kind of feel like a slacker. I should be doing something that's actually building me in a personal development standpoint.
So it has to be productive.
Instead, I guess, which I know, even verbalizing that sounds
absurd.
Yeah, but I don't have any other justification for it.
I do it because it helps me fall asleep. Not that I need help falling asleep. I'm one of those that if I lay down and I'm done with life for the day, I can be asleep in mere minutes. It's not hard for me to fall asleep. My wife kind of hates it on occasion because, we'll kiss, roll over, go to sleep, that whole thing. As soon as I roll over, maybe 2-3 minutes and I'm out. It drives her crazy. Now,
yeah, that's not me.
I don't know if that's because I'm just exhausted every day or if that's just a skill that I've picked up. I've been that way for a long time, a very long time, pre-college even. So, yeah, it's something I've been good at. I typically, again, that's 9:30, quarter to 10 before I'm asleep, and then I get up at 5 a.m. So I still hit that 7.5 range. I think just from how I feel, I think I need around 7.5 to 7:45, somewhere in that range. Not quite 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, I tend to be unruly, according to my wife, because I got too much sleep and I'm rambunctious. So she doesn't like it when I sleep that much. But I shoot for about that range. I can take naps pretty easy, but I don't. If I lay down, now naps are a little bit harder for me to fall asleep, but still it's 10 minutes and I'm out. And I'll take about a 20-minute nap. I'll wake up and I'm good to go. But I haven't done that in months. Maybe.
So do you use an alarm clock in the morning?
I do, but it's usually not necessary. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's necessary since we had our third child. Pre-third child, I was waking up just a few minutes before my alarm. What I don't know, Mike, is that habit because I know the alarm's going to go off, or am I actually rested at that point? I think those are two different things.
Yeah, it could be. But I would say that the quickest way to figure out exactly how much sleep you need is like for a week, don't use your alarm clock.
Yeah.
And that is as scary as it sounds. I realize that, and not everybody can afford to, wake up whenever I wake up. But also, people tend to go to sleep a lot later than they should. But the reason I point that out is, like you said, you get 7.5 hours of sleep every night. In the book, she talks about how 2 weeks of only 6 hours of sleep. So that's only one less hour of sleep. If you were to get one less hour of sleep, you're maybe not even going to notice it the day of. But if you do that for 2 weeks, it is the equivalent of going 24 hours without sleep, which she also elsewhere in the book says is the equivalent of like a 0.1 blood alcohol level. So it's essentially being legally drunk.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Yeah, but it doesn't take a lot to get to that point. One less hour of sleep for 2 weeks. I think probably anybody who's quote unquote busy, has been there.
Right.
But if you were to unpack it, which is why we're talking about the sleep habits and the evening routines, you could probably go to bed an hour earlier. You don't have to watch Game of Thrones or whatever TV show, Mystery Science Theater 3000, before you go to bed.
Yep. Yeah, you could cut that stuff out, but it's no fun. That's what everybody thinks. That's what people are sitting there thinking. It's like, yeah, I could, but I don't want to. But
right, but feeling good is worth more than staying up on your favorite TV show. That's the thing, and most people don't realize it. They think that I can do both. You can't do both. And what this book really heightened for me was there is a choice to be made here. You cannot do all of these things that you want to do. David Allen, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. You have to say no to some stuff. But when you say no to some stuff and when you say yes to getting enough sleep, that makes everything else that you're going to do better. So if you were to just look at it from a productivity standpoint, I've got too much to do. I can't get enough sleep. If you were to get enough sleep, the stuff that you have to do gets done quicker and better. The quality of your work improves and you do it more efficiently. At least that's my hypothesis.
Yeah, I think that's true because I had a period where I was taking naps regularly, and that's when I was working corporate, which was not approved by our corporation, especially from a culture standpoint. What I would do, this is kind of funny, after lunch, I would go out to my car. So we had our own parking garage, but it was very dark and cool because it was somewhat underground. And I would go out to my car, kick the seat back, and take a nap in my car. Which was fine until Minnesota winter came around and then it got cold. But
right.
Yeah, you do what you can. But I would take naps there, and that was mostly because we had our first child, and I was not used to the lack of sleep that brought. So that meant that I was trying desperately to get some sleep, and then I would take those naps. But taking that 30 minutes to go do that for me seemed like I was losing a lot of time, but I knew that if I did that, I would get a lot more done in the afternoon. And that's something that you don't you don't really trust that that's going to happen until you try it.
It feels
this is one of those things. Yeah. It seems really weird to try it because I feel like I'm going to lose a lot of, like, someone's going to notice that I'm missing because I was used to meetings all day long. So I would decline a meeting to go do this. And one that didn't really go well because people would see that it wasn't on, like, I didn't have room on my calendar. So I started booking meetings with myself over that time period so that it looked like I was busy at that time, even though I had nothing going on. That was very fun. You can spoof Exchange and Office 365 doing that. It's pretty easy.
Well, if they're like most meetings, you were probably much more productive taking the nap instead of going to the meeting.
So since then, I've learned what makes a good meeting and what's not, and I realized that I had very few true meetings. I had a lot of time that I spent on the phone and in the room with other people, but meeting to actually accomplish something was fairly rare.
Right.
And yet I was on the phone or in a meeting room all day long. There you go.
Death by meetings.
Corporate America.
So far we've talked about meetings and task management.
Yep. Welcome to the sleep revolution. So yes, I had a period when I was doing napping, and I think I'm going to try to get back to that per this, because although I feel like I'm getting pretty good sleep at night, it's disrupted. I know that because we have a 4-month-old. So my wife is in and out of bed taking care of baby in the middle of the night. I'm not really able to help in the middle of the night, and she knows that, so I don't even try. But yeah, there's that whole thing. So I feel like I want to try taking naps in the day because I don't think I'm getting enough at night.
Sure, that makes sense. And by the way, my wife and I have an understanding as well, so I don't judge you.
Some people do.
Honestly, I am a very deep sleeper. My wife is a very light sleeper, and then also couple that with the fact that my seizure threshold is a lot lower, I guess, higher, however you want to say that. Because of my diagnosis, it's basically we don't want to take any chances.
Yeah,
like, haven't had seizures in a long time. My doctor, even the last time I went to him, is like, "Well, so you want to come off your medication?" And I'm like, "Well, sure, but what could happen?" And, he's like, "Well, you might have a seizure. So do you drive?" And I'm like, "Yes, I drive every day." "Oh, don't do it then." So it's just kind of like not worth the risk, essentially.
Yeah.
But it's interesting though, because this book really highlights to me the fact that, like, you can't play the superhero. You have to figure out how much sleep you actually need. And she's got a lot of different phrases and stories in here where I think just kind of like articulates you are in the camp of not getting enough sleep if this fits you. One of the things that stood out to me, because I've totally been here and done this, even with my professed attention that I give to getting enough sleep and getting enough quality sleep. Page 46, she says, "Most of us force our reluctant brains, indeed our reluctant selves, to wake up with multiple alarms, often set 5 minutes apart on our phones, insistently nudging us toward what passes for consciousness." So I still do this when I have like a meeting or something early in the morning that I have to be at. For example, I went to Austin, Texas not too long ago, and I'll set my alarm in the morning there because we've got our meetings at 8:30. I want to make sure that I absolutely 100% do not oversleep and miss that meeting. And sometimes, the alarm won't wake me up. I'll wake up before the alarm anyways, but that's just not a chance I'm willing to take. But essentially, when I read this quote, it hit me that, like, the fact that I have to do that at all just illustrates that I'm really not getting as much sleep as I really need.
But you're waking up without the alarm most of the time, right?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I use an app called Sleep Cycle, which...
Oh, right. I've heard of this.
This kind of gets into the sleep tech that I put near the end, because she's got a whole chapter on the technology. But this is one app that I think works pretty well. I've used some other stuff that does not work pretty well. Maybe we can talk about that when we get to the sleep tech session. But essentially what Sleep Cycle does is you plug it in and you turn your phone over, you put it by your bed, and it uses the microphone to determine what sleep cycle you're in. So she talks in the book about the 4 stages of sleep. And essentially there's the progression from when you just fall asleep, where you're in light sleep, to very deep sleep, and then the REM, the rapid eye movement sleep, that's where the restoration for your brain comes in. And so you go from light sleep to deep sleep back up to light sleep, and your breathing changes as you go through those different cycles. And even in the book, she talked about how your body temperature cools and you basically like don't move at all when you get down to the deepest sleep. So the microphone will pick that up and determine which stage of sleep that you're in. So it gives you analytics essentially of how well you slept. It even gives you a sleep score, but also you can set an alarm, but it'll be in a range of 30 minutes. So if you say you want to get up by 6:30, what it will do is it will monitor your sleep between 6 and 6:30 and pick the ideal point to wake you up. Because if you get woken up when you're in that deep sleep, then you wake up and you feel groggy, disoriented, and it's really hard to get going with your day. And sometimes that feeling lasts the entire day. Like you just can't shake it. But if you get woken up when you're coming up out of your deep sleep and you're in your light sleep, then you wake up and you're alert and you feel refreshed and you're ready to go. So this actually does make a huge difference to me personally anyways, where I've started using this app, and so it'll kind of pick the ideal point between 6 and 6:30 when you're in your lightest sleep possible, and the alarm will sound at that point.
I tend to avoid apps like this, and it's not because they don't work or I don't think they would be helpful. It's because I run my phone in airplane and do not disturb mode a lot. Or I have it on vibrate instead of the volume up. That's a more common one for me. And they don't always go off. Like they can't override some of that stuff.
Yep.
Like the built-in alarm can. I wish I could use this stuff, but I am not good about making sure my phone is set correctly to allow it to go off, and then it won't go off at all. And now I have an even bigger problem. So I wish I could use these things because I think they're kind of cool, but I don't because I forget. Is that bad?
No. There's another version of this, obviously, that's not not built around an application. Actually, there's a lot of different ones. You could use a Fitbit. There's Apple Watch apps, for example. People sleep with their Apple Watches on. I personally don't know how you can do that because the battery doesn't last long enough.
You gotta have two Apple Watches.
There you go. Actually, CPG Gray, I believe, talked about how he did do that at one point. But there's also hardware options for this. And let me just look this up real quickly because I backed a Kickstarter project. Here's the website. It's hello.is, and I will paste this here so you can put this in the show notes.
Okay.
But this is it's like a little globe. And it looks kind of fashionable, but you set it on your nightstand, and then essentially it does what Sleep Cycle does. It's got lights that go with it, and the same concept. It will track your sleep and then wake you up in a 30-minute range when you're coming up out of your deep sleep. And then the way that you turn the alarm off is you just wave your hand over it, and it turns the alarm off. So absolutely phenomenal idea. Implementation has not been great.
Do you have hardware, one of these things?
I do, yeah. Like I said, I backed it on Kickstarter, so I got the first gen one, and it was like 6 to 8 months late. Finally got it, was super excited, and the app was garbage.
Yeah.
They do update it consistently. I don't know how much they can update the hardware, but it looks like it's gotten a lot better. I just had not a great experience with it, and I tried to use it for quite a while. And eventually gave up on it, just used Sleep Cycle because if I'm traveling, for example, I'm not going to have this with me anyways. So I don't want sleep data in multiple locations. I believe now that kind of is remedied with the Health Kit stuff. So I think Sleep Cycle ties into Health Kit now, and this does as well. That wasn't the case 6 months ago, a year ago, whatever, when I was messing around with all this stuff. Also, this thing, in addition to having this unit that you plug into the wall and puts on your nightstand, there's a little pill, they call it, that clips on your pillowcase. And that's the thing that actually has the microphone. So that has a round battery that you have to replace about every year, which isn't a lot.
Right.
But I don't want the battery to die and then my alarm not go off because I forgot to change the battery, you know? And it says will last about a year. I've never actually tested it to see how long it will go. I just see a lot of failure points with this that I'm not willing to take a chance on, but it's a really cool idea. And you can even get multiple sleep pills, they call them. So you could have one for you, one for your wife, and then you can even have separate alarms based off of that if you wanted to. It can handle multiple user profiles, so to speak.
So the problem I have with all this tech, since we're going to go ahead and start on our tech section here is that I don't travel a lot, but when I do, I don't want to be tied to these other systems. And there are some occasions when I'm in a place where there's not a good internet signal, and I may or may not have an outlet that I can use for it. So I get a little bit leery of using stuff like this because I don't know. I don't want to become dependent on it, I guess, is my hang up. Because I feel like if I become dependent on it, then I've got another issue where I'm somewhere new, I'm visiting someone, and now I can't sleep, which just adds to the stress of a situation, of the whole travel bit. And I don't want to deal with that.
I agree, but I also don't go camping as much as you, apparently. So when I travel, it's actually more important for me to use this type of stuff because this provides a little bit of familiarity and systems when I'm traveling where all the other stuff I have no control over.
Yeah.
I went to Austin. My flight got canceled because of quote unquote weather, but United wouldn't pay for a hotel even though there was no weather.
You were brave on United.
It was before the guy got dragged off the plane. So I was complaining for a few days, and then I'm like, I guess my experience wasn't so bad.
It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, but in that particular instance, there was a lot of stuff going on in Austin. I couldn't find a hotel room. I had to stay at some hotel that I normally would not stay at. It was not a real great experience. Pretty loud. Walls were pretty thin. And, in that particular scenario, like I said, sleep's really important to me. Like, if I don't have the supports, then it could be a very long night and a very long next day, which is kind of what happened anyways, because I had to get up so early. I had to get up at 4 a.m. And just like having to get up that early threw my body off anyways, but not being able to have these tools in place. Another thing that I use whenever I travel, I have special headphones for blocking out noise. Let me see if I can find these real quick.
Are these the Bose?
They're not. They are called bedphones.
Bedphones.
Okay, yep, I found them. Let me send you the link here. This, again, was, I think, if not a Kickstarter, like some sort of crowdfunding project. I've had these forever. Essentially, what they are very thin headphones with a huge cushion on the actual headphone itself. So if you fall asleep, like the person in the picture on the right, and you have a headphone in, you're not going to wake up and your ear's going to be hurting.
Interesting.
So they have a very slim profile. They're not like the Apple EarPods or anything like that where they are hard and they stick out because that causes obviously a lot of discomfort.
Yeah.
So I have a pair of these that I will bring whenever I travel just in case I'm in that hotel room, for example, and there's a lot of noise, and I will put on some low instrumental music to help me fall asleep. Something like Brain FM works great for this. They've got like sleep programs in there. And there's a lot of applications actually that you can buy now with those, what do they call them? Binaural beats or whatever. They're like the sound patterns which are proven to help you fall asleep. I never really got those to work very well, but the bedphones are a big help sometimes.
Interesting.
Essentially, the way my brain works, I always think worst case scenario while I'm traveling. What's the worst thing that could happen? And then I try to control what I can.
That makes sense. I just got back from a trip down in St. Louis. One of my wife's friends just got married down there. And I get it. I mean, sleeping in hotels, I've done a lot of that in the past. And I'm not a huge fan because there's enough other people that have such different sleep habits that just make zero sense to me whatsoever that, they'll keep me up regardless. And, maybe they'll wake me up early. Well, they won't wake me up early. I'll wake them up early in payback. But it's not fun. And for me, it has a lot to do with what pillow do I use and how comfortable is the bed. And my wife has gotten to where she sleeps with a white noise machine. Mm-hmm. She's got an app on her phone. I couldn't tell you what it is. But she has that running. And that seems to help quite a bit. It's drowning out some of the other stuff. But outside of that, it's all the habits that I have and how I go to bed that help me out. So I don't really get into the tech thing.
And I think that's okay. The tech, I would say that my big takeaway from the technology section of this book in particular is that a lot of the technology just isn't there. I used Hello as the example where like that's a great idea implementation wise, the technology really doesn't match up with the desired and promised user experience.
Yeah.
Even like the Jawbone Up and the Fitbit and all that type of stuff, like it's great in theory that this thing can sense exactly when you're coming up out of your deep sleep and wake you up. But I question how effectively it can really monitor that. Sleep Cycle does a pretty good job, but it's on my nightstand. It's not right next to me. So how does it really know? If I'm turned the other way or I turn over in the middle of the night, like, does that throw it off? And I'm sure that they've got a team of researchers that is accommodating for that. Like they recognize that stuff is happening, but it kind of feels to me like right now people are understanding how important sleep is. There's this technology that's coming out that's trying to help facilitate that, but we're kind of in the early stages of this yet. And so there's not really anything that's like, yep, this will work 100% of the time. This is foolproof. This is awesome. I haven't found anything like that yet.
Yeah, this is also why I tend to avoid like some of the activity trackers, because if I start using tech like this, I do one of two things. I either become dependent on it, which I don't want to do, because then what happens if it doesn't work or, the update breaks it or something? Like I just don't want to depend on it in that way. And two, if I start using this stuff, it doesn't always, but in my case, I think it would keep me from paying attention to my own body. Like if I wake up and I'm tired when I first get up, I didn't get enough sleep. If I wake up and I feel rested and I'm ready to, go start a fire, if I wake up that way, then I know I got enough sleep. And if I wake up tired, that tells me I should probably take a nap that day, despite me not doing it. But that's my sense, is that if I start using these things, these trackers and such, I might lose that touch of understanding of myself and that sense of, am I in a good place or not? I really don't want to lose that sense, because I feel like that's extremely helpful in the long run.
I completely agree with that. I think where technology can help is as a substitute for the sleeping pills that she mentions.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That whole section really kind of made me angry. She talks about how some of the different ones cause people
Ambien was the big one.
Do things. Yeah, and Lunesta, I think, was another one.
Right.
Where they actually have in the warnings, like you may do a whole bunch of stuff and not realize it until the next morning, which just scares me. But essentially the whole idea behind the sleeping pills, even if you're not doing those, even if you're doing something mild, like you can get melatonin pills, which again, I bring those sometimes when I'm traveling, because I usually am pretty anxious at night when I'm traveling. Mm-hmm. And so if I just want to not take a chance, I'll take a melatonin pill, but that's natural. Your body's producing melatonin anyways, as long as you're not staring at blue light till midnight, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But she mentions that 14% of people are taking these sleeping pills, not occasionally, but every single night. And she had a phrase as she's in that section. She says, "We're overtired, but we can't sleep." Which obviously there's a bigger issue here then.
It sounds like our baby.
Yeah. That gets into the whole task management thing, I think. But before we get there, the whole idea behind sleeping pills, like from a marketing perspective, this is genius, because your target market is everybody.
Yeah.
And essentially what they're doing is they are the answer to a manufactured need that potentially everybody deals with. There's a lot of manufactured demand for these sleeping pills, especially as it becomes more and more important and people start to realize the importance of sleep. She had a whole section on the history of sleep, which personally I didn't really like. Kind of reminded me of what's that book we read, The Shallows?
Mm-hmm.
It was shorter, thankfully. But to sum up that whole section, she talks about how sleep used to be really important. People thought it was great. And then people started shifting and believing that you didn't really need that much sleep. And it was kind of a badge of honor not to get enough sleep. And now she's kind of advocating for, and I believe what we're kind of at this tipping point where people are again realizing the importance of sleep. And all these uber productive people are saying that the reason that they're so productive and the reason they get so much done is because they are well rested. Like that sounds great. And everybody wants to achieve that now, but they're so anxious and there's so many other things. There's so much stimuli. There's so much stuff that we're dealing with throughout the day that when it comes time to go to sleep, you're like, okay, now I've got 7.5 hours to get sleep. Let's go to sleep right now.
Yeah.
And they can't. So then it's like, well, how do I do that? I know, I'll take a pill.
Right.
That's the easy button, but we're not dealing with the root of the issue. We're just treating the symptom. And if you just treat the symptom, it's really not helping the disease at all. In fact, she says that the sleeping pills on page 58 only give you an extra 3 to 34 minutes of sleep. But then, like I mentioned, they have tons of side effects.
Right. And some of which scare the crap out of me.
Yep, definitely.
I just don't want to think about that. Tell me about this blue light thing. You've mentioned it a couple times, and I know that it has a pretty big impact on you, and I feel like it has an impact on me, but why don't you explain it?
It has an impact on you, whether you think it does or not.
I get that, but I don't want to admit. Maybe that's what I should say.
There's tons of research. If you go to the first people who I really noticed took an approach to solve this with the technology is Flux. So the website, I believe, is justgetflux.com. And Flux is an application which has been on Mac and Windows 2, I believe, for a long time, which changed the color of your computer monitor after you went to sleep. So blue light is essentially the light that is emitted from your electronic devices, your television, your computer, even your phone, that makes your brain think that it is still daytime. So your body is naturally wired to, once the sun goes down, maybe you'd light a candle or something, you'd have some warm orangish light, but your body still knew that it was night and it would produce the melatonin, which would eventually help you fall asleep. But if you're staring at these screens, they are emitting this blue light, which is more common. It's much more similar to the type of light that you see during the day. So what it's signaling to your body is that it's not nighttime yet, so don't produce the melatonin. So if you're staring at your computer screen or you're staring at your phone until 10 p.m. at night and the sun set 4 hours ago, your body naturally has this cycle where it gets ready for sleep, but you haven't started that yet. And so you're continually telling your body, go, 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 push, push, push. And then you get to the point where you are exhausted, but because you've been looking at this blue light, you can't fall asleep.
And your body may be exhausted, but your mind is still racing.
Exactly. So what Flux does is it changes when the sun goes down, and it can even use your location to look at your local sunset, sunrise. It will change your screen, and you can control the temperature, but over time it will make it more and more orangish to represent the warm light of like a candle light, as opposed to the harsh blue light, which is just jolting and keeps your body awake. So iOS now has a shift called Night Shift, or has this feature called Night Shift, which somewhat does the same thing. But prior to Night Shift, if you were to ever take your phone in the middle of the night and unlock it, for example, and like you're blasted with this light and you're like, my eyes, like that's the intensity of that blue light. Okay. And so even if you don't realize it, using something like Flux or Night Shift to a certain extent, but Flux is a lot better in my opinion. It's a lot more severe, a lot more harsh. And some people will say, well, it looks so orange, I can't use my screen. Well, you shouldn't be using your screen at this time anyways, if Flux is active.
You shouldn't know that.
Right. But what it does is that it severely reduces the strain on your eyes. If you don't believe the blue light thing at all, it's just causing your body not to work as hard. But the Flux website, they've got tons and tons of research papers which show essentially what I just unpacked in a couple of minutes in much more detail. And so if you have a scientific brain like Joe's, maybe you want to go read that research. Some of it, I suppose, can be interesting.
It's all interesting, Mike. It's all interesting.
The gist of it is that Flux gives you indications that, hey, you shouldn't be using your computer anymore. And then even if you have to, it makes it easier for you to fall asleep when you do. It'll even give you notifications saying, hey, you've got to get up in 9 hours. So dummy, put your computer to bed.
Yeah. Have you, the Night Shift thing, maybe it's not Night Shift, the alarm part of iOS has a bedtime feature now. Have you seen this? I use this. I love this.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a really, really cool idea. But again, like iOS is, and getting to the point where they're recognizing that this stuff is happening. People are using their phones all hours of the night, and they're trying to implement this stuff to get people to make more effective habits. I think that's awesome. I also think that it's not as good as something like Flux, though. And I don't want to diminish what they're doing, because like doing it at all is good. But for me, like I said, I discovered Flux a long time ago, and in my opinion, it's way better. The people behind Flux live, breathe, and eat this stuff. Their mission is to develop this application which is going to give you the maximum benefit in this particular area. Whereas Night Shift is just a feature, the bedtime thing is just a feature that, yeah, you can use it. Hopefully people will use it. But if they don't use it, oh well, they're still going to, use all the other features that are built into the operating system. So it's more a case of like, this is one of many things versus this is the only thing. And obviously the company that this is their only thing, it's going to be, in my opinion, a better product.
Yeah. The reason I like the bedtime feature, there's two things. One, it has the alert that tells you, hey, you should not be on your phone. You should be going to bed now. Like, I like that because it's kind of an indicator to me that, okay, at this point, I should not be on my phone or it's going to impact my sleep. Like, it's pretty helpful to me to have that. The other thing I really like about it is the sounds that it can use for an alarm are not, they're not jarring in any way. They're slowly progressing. Like, they come in easy and then they progressively get louder. I love that because it doesn't... One, my phone, I don't do any of these tracking systems that know where I'm at in my sleep cycle at all. I don't know any of that. And I don't know that I want to. I think I would rather worry about my bedtime than I would about my time getting up. But anyway, that's beside the point. I'll get there in a minute. But I like that the sounds that they use are slowly progressing, because then it slowly pulls me out instead of jarring me and giving me that adrenaline shot and making me like, whoa, what just happened? Like, I don't want to I don't want to do that in the morning. I like the slowly get me up thing, but at a certain time. Like, for some reason, I like that. So that's the part I really enjoy about the bedtime piece. It does do some tracking to know, did you sleep that long? Well, it's only tracking, like, when did I set my phone down and plug it in? It's working off of that, which isn't very accurate in some cases. It's pretty accurate for me, but that's mostly because I go to bed when that thing tells me it's bedtime, and I fall asleep very quickly. So it's fairly accurate for me, but I would imagine for the general public, it's not at all.
Right. Now, so the situation that you just described, then this is the thing for you.
Oh, I hear a keyboard.
Yeah. And I have one of these as well. This is a enormous alarm clock light, essentially. It's the Philips HF 3520 wake up light with colored sunrise simulation.
Oh my gosh.
So this is the inverse of the sunset and the flux effect. All right. So if you want to get up early prior to the sun getting up, and you want to be naturally led out of your deep sleep by a specific time, then this is the thing, because what this will do is, if you were to crank this all the way up, it is very, very bright. But let's say you set your alarm for 6 a.m. on this.
Yep.
What it will do is it will both, with sound and with the light, there's a bunch of different sounds you can choose from. There's like nature sounds, waves, birds, things like that. Things that are not jarring. Okay, so let's say you set it for 6 a.m. At 5:30, it will start to glow and the sounds will start, and it will get progressively brighter and progressively louder until the time that you have to be awake.
Interesting.
And so as your room gets louder and as it gets brighter, your body naturally is coming up out of that deep sleep, but it's not just blaring the song that you chose for or the sound for your alarm at that specific time. So this also can do what you're talking about. The thing I don't like about this, just me personally, is that there is no way to turn off that clock display.
Oh.
So that means that if you were to wake up in the middle of the night and you see that, oh my gosh, it's only 3 a.m. Oh, and then me, like, I'll take that time, whatever I woke up, be like, well, if I can fall asleep right away, I can get 2 more sleep cycles in, you know? So that obviously is counterintuitive. I don't like to have the time displayed in my bedroom at all.
Oh, we have that done already. So I like to know that. And honestly, it's helpful to us because then we know when, Hazel, our youngest, is waking up or going to sleep. And does she need to go back to sleep? She ate an hour ago, so she doesn't need to eat right now. Like, we use it for that. Because then, have they had 2 hours? Do they have? Yeah. We kind of need to know that. So I already have a clock that shows the time right now. My thing is,
this might be perfect for you.
Maybe, but the thing is, I get up at 5, and my wife doesn't always get up until about 7:30.
Yeah, that's the other issue with this is that obviously you could set it on one side of the bed, and maybe it will wake you up and not your wife. You can press a button and then have it instantly turn off again.
Yeah.
But my guess would be that it would affect the other person as well.
Yeah. I think if we got up at the same time, that would be awesome.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that for this to really work, you would have to have an agreed upon sleep time and wake time.
As much as I would love for that to happen. We had this conversation. So when we were coming back from St. Louis, my wife got a little interested in this, and I told her I was a little bit behind on reading it. I wasn't sure I was going to complete it before we recorded this morning. So she was kind enough to read it to me as we were driving. And so it was interesting because that led to a few conversations between us about, how much sleep do you need, and does that affect how you go to bed and all this. It was an interesting conversation, but she was very clear to call out, yeah, she needs close to 9 hours of sleep. She's one of those that needs more than most. And this would not go over well. Like, us getting our wake up times to align would require going to bed at different times, and we don't like doing that. So we have to shift at one side or the other. Yeah, gosh, this thing would be cool though, but I would become dependent on it again.
Let's back up a little bit and talk about the task management thing and how that relates to sleep, because this was one of my big takeaways.
Okay.
I sense this common theme kind of throughout this whole book. In page 63, for example, she talks about how millennials are the most stressed generation, almost a third saying that they can't sleep because they are thinking of all the things they need to do or did not get done. She talks about how 60% of people have fallen asleep while holding their phone. She talks about how lack of sleep can cause irreversible loss of brain cells. On page 102, she talks about how sleep allows you to process things better and less emotionally because the amygdala can't hijack things. The amygdala is the emotional response that triggers the fight or flight response in your brain. And essentially, as I'm reading all this stuff, I'm thinking of David Allen and the whole mind like water concept. How if you don't have a system that you can trust, then you can't respond appropriately to any of these given impacts. David Allen would say that, like, he uses the example when you throw a pebble into still water, what happens is that the ripples will emanate from the point of impact in direct response to the size of the impact. They're not going to be bigger on one side and less on another side unless you threw it at an angle or whatever. And it's, in essence, his approach to task management then is that you want to respond to things appropriately. You don't want to fly off the handle when things are not a big deal. When something is really major, you want to be able to recognize that. You want to be able to get your family out of the house immediately when it is burning down. But you don't want to respond to that email immediately with a super emotional response. You want to sleep on it for a night before you, and then usually after that, you don't want to send that email. So little things like this. And what I got out of this book in pertaining to this is that sleep is one of the things that can cause your system to go haywire and can instantly throw you into that state of emergency scan modality that David Allen talks about. On page 167, she says, lying in bed, putting out imaginary fires is one of the most draining things we can do. And instantly, like when I read that, I'm like, yeah, emergency scan modality, where you're living your life like a firefighter. You know that your system can't handle everything. You know you can't keep up with everything. You know there's a bunch of stuff you're not getting to. So what you end up doing from a task management perspective, getting things done perspective, David Allen perspective, is that you are scanning the horizon, looking for the next thing that you forgot to do, looking for that fire to pop up. And then you go and you deal with the thing that is urgent. And then you go back into your emergency scan modality and you're just scanning the horizon, looking for the next fire that you got to put out. And when it comes to productivity and goal achievement and creating the future that you want, which really is the heart behind Bookworm, I would say, is that we're reading these books not just to check them off on a list, but because we want to improve ourselves. And I think last time you asked me, like, how do you actually implement the stuff that you read? And I mentioned that I believe it has a cumulative effect. It gives you a bigger toolbox with which to solve your problems that you encounter. And I 100% believe that that's true. So if we're going to do all of this stuff, then let's make sure that we don't throw it all out the window by not getting enough sleep. You can have the best system. You can read the most books. You can do everything right. And if you're not getting enough sleep, you are, in Arianna Huffington's words, you're legally drunk. We would not advocate for people coming to work and doing their job when they're drunk. But we would, and we hold people up on a pedestal who come to work and do their job even when they're tired, even when they're exhausted. But the decisions that they're making, especially if they are higher level, if they're management level, if they're CEO level, if the decisions that you're making are affecting other people, like, this is the worst thing that you can do.
Yeah.
And it
creates
boggles my mind. Yeah, it creates a ton of problems. Those bad decisions, they can be fatal, not just by you deciding to get in a car and drive when you're drowsy. It's the same decision getting in the car, deciding to drive when you're drunk. Like, if you haven't slept 24 hours, there should be a test that you could do to put when you pull people over and go to jail because your blood alcohol level, essentially your brain alcohol level, because you haven't gotten enough sleep, is at a certain point.
Your brain sleep level is too low.
Yeah, you're putting people in the exact same situation. You're putting other people's lives at risk when you do that sort of thing. And that just, like, the severity of that, when I read this, like, wow, this is a really big deal.
One of the sections I really liked was the part where she's explaining how to get good sleep or how to get to sleep. And so my process that I use whenever I go to sleep is very simple. I try to kind of go into this whole fantasy imagination world, which sounds kind of weird, but that's where The Hobbit has come in for me lately, because it's definitely a fiction world. But I've done this a lot, like just made up stories in my mind whenever I'm going, like, I lay down and my mind just starts running with random fictional stories. And I think that's what helps me fall asleep, is because I'm not worrying about work. I'm not worrying about code that I'm writing or anything like that. I'm just off in this fictional world. And she didn't really talk about that, but I've talked to some folks who do the same thing. And I feel like that's a fairly common thing for people who fall asleep right away. Like folks who are like me, who less than 5 minutes, you're out. That seems to be one of the things that people talk about, at least that I've run into, that's how they fall asleep right away. Have you ever heard of this? Am I just really weird and running across really weird people?
Maybe. Like I said, I naturally have trouble falling asleep. And so she talks about this 4-7-8 method, which I've tried a couple times. I haven't gotten to the point where I've fallen asleep using it, but I think I can see the effect that it has.
I think it's a trigger. That was what I thought. Exactly. I think it's just developing the habit. What is it called? Cognitive behavioral therapy, where you're creating that trigger where your mind knows what to do in that scenario. I think that's what that is.
Yeah. And so essentially, just to summarize this real quickly, the 4-7-8 method, you breathe in for 4 counts, and then you hold it for 7 counts, and then you breathe out with, as she described it, a whooshing sound for 8 counts. And you do this over and over again. And when I was doing this, what I found is that holding it for 7 counts and then breathing out for 8 counts after doing this a couple times felt like I was a little bit short of breath, which maybe is the desired effect. I could see that being the thing, that if you just do that consistently, that's enough to knock you out. Because she says if you do this consistently, you can get it to the point where you can do this and fall asleep consistently after only 1 minute. And this is not the first place that I've heard of this either. So I do actually believe that this works. But I don't know, just following the process, the way my brain works, I'm so focused on, okay, did I do this exactly right? that
You're worried
I don't
about
think I could.
4, 7, 8.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, was that 3.5 or was that 4?
Exactly. Like seriously, this is the stuff I think about. I'm like, am I holding this long enough? Am I going too fast, too slow? Like, she didn't give me enough details. That's what's going through my head as I'm implementing this. And I was just like, this is completely counterintuitive, counterproductive.
Right.
This isn't going to work for me. So I'm sure that
much.
Yeah. One of the other things that she said, though, that I think I can totally see this having a big impact on me is on page 211. Not to go back to task management, but kind of. She says, finish every day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget them as fast as you can. Tomorrow is a new day. My takeaway from this is like when you are done with the day, like finish the day. And this is where the evening routine, evening ritual comes in. But a big part of this for me is to not think about what happened anymore. And so I've got this daily reflection template that I've set up in day one in Launch Center Pro, and I do it occasionally.
Yeah.
I know theoretically, like intellectually, that I should be doing this consistently. And this, when I read that, it just reminded me that like that's what that is doing. It's not just to have a record of this stuff. It is so that you can wipe the slate clean at the end of the day and you don't have to think about these things anymore. And even if you've got a task management system, I find myself still struggling with this, where I can have everything in my task management system, but because I haven't formally like erased the blackboard of my mind, which is what journaling and reflection does, I have trouble disconnecting from that stuff.
At the end of my workday, I do a shutdown ritual. We've talked about this before.
Yep.
And part of that for me has incorporated a brain dump, like what she's talking about. I just go through, what is it I use? I'm going to look it up. I'm going to find a link to it. There's a trigger list that David Allen has for GTD whenever you do a brain dump. And I run through that thing, which is long, to be honest. But I run through it very quickly, and it triggers anything I think I may have to do, and I dump them into inboxes, and then in the morning I go through my inboxes. So that serves as kind of a brain dump for me. That way I know the system at least has things captured, and then I can go through them later. And that helps me a lot to not worry about it. But I do it at the end of my workday, not before I go to bed. And I do that because I don't want to be thinking about work stuff when I go spend time with my family. That's why I do that.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But even from a non-work or task perspective, I find personally that I can be thinking about what happened during the day, even if there's no action item associated with it. Like you have to follow up with this person on this.
Yeah.
It's just constantly thinking about, well, that kind of stunk, or
yeah,
I really enjoyed, that experience. And I find that I will continually throw these things around in my brain, roll them over and over and over and over and over again until I actually get it off the mind and on the paper, so to speak.
Yeah.
Even though it's digital paper.
Get it into a screen. We've been going on this for a while now. Let's shift over to action items because I think that's going to incorporate, like, what are we going to do for our sleep habits now that we've read the book? I think that's going to incorporate that.
Yep.
So for me, I'm going to go to bed. That's all I wrote on this list. Because I know I say that I go to sleep at 9:30, 9:45-10-ish, but I've been pretty bad, especially the last month or two, about, it's pushing 9:30 before I even start going to bed, which means it's 10:15 before I'm asleep, and that's not good. That
Right.
puts me down below that 7 hours of sleep, and that's not a good day if I do that. So I want to be better about that, so I'm going to be more particular about going to bed and starting my evening ritual of getting me ready and getting to bed. I'm going to be a little more diligent about that. To kind of go with that, I'm going to try to get my nap habit back. It's been a while since I've been into the nap habit, but since I know that I can fall asleep pretty easily, and I know that when I take a nap, I don't need an alarm of any kind. I will just wake up 20 minutes later after I fall asleep. I know that, and it's never failed me. I don't know why I can do that, but I love that I can do that. So sorry for those of you who can't do it. I'm going to take advantage of it because I can.
Yeah,
so I want to get that habit back. It's pretty easy for me to notice that I'm pretty tired after lunch, since at that point I've been up for 7 hours. 7.5, 8 hours almost. So I'm going to try to start developing that habit of taking a nap after lunch whenever I go back to quote-unquote work at that point. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully that'll help me to get to a point where I'm getting enough sleep in a day. That's my goal in all of this is I don't think overall I'm getting enough sleep per day, and I'm trying to get, I think, roughly 30 to 45 minutes more on average. That's what I'm shooting for.
Nice. So my first action item is actually relating to a section which we didn't even get to, which is okay.
There's a lot of good stuff in this one.
There's a lot of good stuff in this book, which is how do you get enough sleep with kids? Let me just real briefly touch on this and say if you have kids,
because it's hard,
it's even more important to get sleep when you can. You have to be even more diligent and even militant about bedtimes and things like that, because you can't just accept the fact that, oh, my sleep is gonna be terrible for a period, because it does have very real impact. And essentially, if you are robbing yourself of sleep, you are robbing the people who you love of the real you. Going back to the emergency scan modality, like I don't want my kids to remember me as super emotional, fly off the handle. Everything was a big deal with dad. Yeah, that's not the memories I want them to have. So I want to instill in them that sleep is important, but also this is one thing that she brought up, making bedtime fun and positive for my kids. And I don't know exactly what this looks like yet, but I can tell you that a couple of my kids, the older ones, they totally get it. They are fine going to bed. But the younger ones, it's like, it's time for bed. No!
Yeah.
So my goal is to think about how to change that reaction. And we do have a routine that we follow, and we do like read stories at night before we go to bed and stuff like that. But I need to think on this and think if there's anything else I can do to just encourage them that the bedtime routine is not only important, but it's also fun.
So we had a bit of an issue with our oldest not wanting to go to bed. This has probably been about a year and a half ago. She was about 2.5 at the time. So she's younger, so keep that in mind. And what we started doing was telling her bedtime will be here in 10 minutes, like just warning her that it was coming. And then here, when was it? It would have been this past Christmas. My in-laws, at our request, got them a one of those timers. Time? I think that's what it's called. It's where you turn the dial and it has the red background, and the red disappears as the time ticks away. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But it's super handy because I can turn that to set it for bedtime. And then the girls know, even our 2-year-old, she can't read numbers. And even our oldest kind of struggles with it at the moment. We'll get there. But both of them can see there's still red on the clock, so it's not bedtime yet. Or it's almost gone, which means it's almost bedtime. And for some reason, knowing that it's coming and then seeing that time tick away, whenever it goes off, they are the ones that say bedtime, and then they run upstairs. Like, they are the ones that do that, not us, which is super helpful because then I don't have to worry about them throwing a fit at bedtime.
Yeah, I think that's good. And we do something similar with the wake times. We have this, it's called the OK to Wake alarm clock. And
I've seen these things. Yeah.
Essentially what it does is it's an alarm clock for kids that turns green when it's okay to get up. So we have this OK to Wake alarm clock where, especially the younger ones, they know you can't come out of your room till the clock is green.
Right.
We have it set for 7 a.m. And what that does is it gives my wife and I a little bit of a buffer in the morning to make sure we can get our morning routine done.
Right.
And so this kind of sounds like the same sort of thing at the end of the day, but I think I want to go even deeper with that. Like, how do I get them excited about bedtime, if that makes sense? And maybe excited is not the right word because you don't want them all jacked up, obviously, when they go to bed.
Right.
But looking forward to it, not just like, oh, I've got 10 minutes, I'm going to finish what I'm doing, but yay, we get to go to bed now. I don't know. Maybe that's impossible with kids. I don't know. Maybe
know.
If I figure this out, I can make a product and sell it to parents everywhere and make millions of dollars.
You'd
I
be
don't know.
Billionaire there.
that's the need I'm recognizing, and I have to ponder this a bit more. But there's got to be something.
Well, we found that, and part of what helped us was that both of the older two both love reading books. They love it when we read to them. And we just made sure that we incorporated that as one of the first things we do when we're getting them ready for bed. And if we do that, they're super excited to go do that. that's what eventually got them to the point where, we set the timer and they're like excited for it to go off because they know it means we get to go read a book. So that's what helped us. But I've not, I don't think I've ever met your kids. So I wouldn't know what they specifically would need in this scenario. They're all so different. Why are they all so different, Mike?
I don't know. So that's the first action item. Second one, no eating after 7 p.m. There's a whole section in the book about exercise and diet and how that impacts your sleep. And there are a couple days during the week in particular where we're going until 9, sometimes even later. And if I'm not careful, what I can end up doing is eating dinner after I get home. And what I want to do is essentially figure out a way during the day to get the meals that I need in without having to resort to eating right before I go to bed. Because those nights I can tell I don't sleep as well. So no eating after 7 p.m. And then I mentioned with sleep cycle and stuff like that, when I started reading this book, I've started using that again. I've kind of gotten away from it. Again, like a lot of this stuff is just, it's stuff that I've known and it's stuff that has stuck for a little while. And I'm hoping that, because you're holding me accountable on a podcast, that I can actually make it stick.
There you go.
But the whole thing is adjust and repair. I mean, I don't think that it's healthy or productive to say, I'm going to make all of these huge changes every 2 weeks, every time I read a book, which kind of gets back into what we were talking about at the beginning of the last episode, I believe, where people are like, well, how do you implement all this stuff? Yeah. Just implement what makes sense. Try it. See if it sticks. And if it doesn't stick, it's not a huge deal. Don't beat yourself up about it because, I used to do this and now I don't anymore. It's every day, every week, every year, like adjust and repair, and then just make sure that you're moving forward. So I just want to throw that out there because I think that there can be a tendency to, if you have a mind like mine, beat yourself up like, oh man, I stink at this stuff because I said I was going to do this and now I don't anymore. Like, oh well, make a decision, start today.
Right. Cool. What'd you think of her writing style?
I liked it. The only part I didn't really like was the history of sleep chapter, like I mentioned, but I thought it was really good. I thought it was really approachable. Thought it was a very easy read. You pick it up and it's pretty big. It's like 286 pages or something, and there's a bunch of appendices in the back, including a whole list of hotels that she recommends because they help you fall asleep, which I thought was pretty cool. Bunch of links to research, which obviously I didn't read, but maybe you will.
Oh, come on, Mike.
So yeah, I thought it was a really good book. A lot of this stuff, like I said, I've known this stuff conceptually before. I understood the concept of blue light and the sleep cycles and all that because I've done that part of the research anyways myself, previous to reading this book. But for people who are just getting into this, this is the definitive resource, I would say. Like you should look at this. I'm going to rate this 4.5 stars.
Nice. I also enjoyed the book. I agree with you. It was very easy to just pick it up, go to town on it. And she had one... Well, I would disagree with you on the history thing, but I love history. So I like the whole biphasic sleep thing where you sleep, 3 or 4 hours and then you get up for an hour and a half and then you go back to sleep for 4 hours. Like that's always intrigued me, but I'm not going to experiment with that. But the history piece I always think is interesting. I like to know where we came from because then it helps me put things in context. Anyway, I really like that. But the chapter that kind of made me stop and pause was the dreams chapter. Like, okay, this is getting a little frou-frou for me. But I understand people love recording dreams and they think there's a lot to them. It's not for me. So I wish she would have scaled back on that one because you can tell she's a big believer in that and spent a lot of time on it. I wish she didn't, but that's the way it is. So again, I agree with you. A lot of great examples. It made it very easy to read. I had some small qualms with it, like the dreams piece. I felt like she used a lot of examples that seemed to repeat each other on occasion. It seemed like there was a number, like the sports stories. It's like, okay, here's another one, and here's another one with the same thing. Like it seemed like it was repetitive in that sense. But I'm not going to dock it too much for that because it was still very helpful to see that. But I would put it at a 4.0. out of the 5. I liked it a lot.
Nice. All right, so upcoming books.
Oh, yeah, the next one's mine, right?
Yep.
Because it was your choice. Out of Our Minds, Sir Ken Robinson. You got another couple TED Talks you need to watch for this one, Mike.
All right.
You're going to be a TED Talk master here before long.
Yeah, and I actually did not have a specific book in mind that I absolutely wanted to cover next, so I went back to the recommended list.
Oh, nice.
And I found The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, which I think I probably know all of these habits already, but I've never read the entire book.
Yeah, I've never even picked it up.
This is obviously a productivity classic, so yeah, excited to read that one.
It's like required reading. So the next one up would be Out of Our Minds, Ken Robinson, and then 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Out of Our Minds it's about creativity in school systems, if it's the one I recall and I remember picking out. I didn't pull it up to look at it specifically.
Oh boy.
Yes. So yes, the tagline on it is learning to be creative. And Ken Robinson is on this whole path of school systems and how they don't encourage creativity. They actually inhibit or destroy creativity in our kids. So I'm interested in that. We each have kids, so I'm hoping this will help me understand how to teach them.
Right.
What do you got for Gap books? What are you reading between here and there?
I am reading a book that Tan actually gave me, and it's an internet marketing book, but it is fascinating. It really dives into the whole idea of funnels and internet marketing, and I'm getting a lot of stuff out of this. I've started it already. I've read actually 100 pages the first day that I picked it up.
Nice.
And it's .com Secrets by Russell Brunson. So this is a book that if you don't like the sensational celebrity personalities like Tony Robbins, stuff like that, you probably wouldn't like this guy. But I personally don't like that personality either. But the content in here is just really, really good. Understanding the psychology behind internet marketing and all of that. So very beneficial for anybody who works online.
Nice. I am picking up The End of Absence, tagline, reclaiming what we've lost in a world of constant connection. I might be obsessed with this topic. I like learning a lot about it. I think it's partly because I want to know how to teach my kids the right thing. I think that's why I'm obsessed with it. Yes, there you go. So a lot of books here. If you have one, and since Mike is starting to step into pulling things from our recommendations list, and I think I'm going to start doing that soon as well. But if you have one that you would like us to go through, bookworm.fm/recommend, or go to the homepage, hit the big button on the right that says recommend. It'll get you to a form. You can fill that out and tell us what you want us to read. And if you want to see what else has been recommended, just stick out there on the website. There's a list, Bookworm book list. What's the URL? bookworm.fm/list. And you can see what all we've been through.
Yeah, and if you want to help other people find the show, going over to iTunes and leaving us a review would be very helpful. We want to dislodge that other radio station podcast as the number
We're
one
gonna get
bookworm. Yeah. And if you want to engage with us on some of the books that we've read, you put together a discussion site, the Productivity Guild, which I believe is the productivityguild.com.
Yeah, just productivityguild.com. I rebranded the discussion site. So it's the same thing. I just give it a different name. I need to get new logos and stuff for that at some point, but there you go. But if you're into this and you've been reading along with us, especially with this one, I would be interested on this particular episode to go to the Guild, if you would, listeners, please. Let us know what your sleep habits are, what you're trying to do, what you're going to change. I'm interested to see what other people are doing, especially those who are along on the trip with us on Bookworm. So yeah, go out to the Guild. Share your thoughts. What are you up to? And if you are reading along with us, be sure to pick up Out of Our Minds, and we'll go on a journey with Ken Robinson next.